Tapi menurut lu kayak when justru entrepreneur should quit?
Oh, when should they quit?
Pas gue lagi ngomong tuh gue dilemparin makanan.
Oh wow.
That happened when I was 12, 13 years old gitu ya.
Somebody threw you something?
Ya, sampah.
Oh,
sampah
not even
makanan.
makanan,
Sampah makanan.
Like a
sisa, jadi sisa makanan
like
dia
a
makan
trash,
cilok atau
rubbish
apalah gitu.
to your face.
Ya.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Wise Underdogs channel. Today we're gonna cover the 4th episode of this channel, and today I'm honored to host my very dear friend for more than a decade, Muhammad Iman Usman. Iman is the co-founder and COO of Ruang Guru, a tech platform in Southeast Asia that has revolutionized millions of lives in their educational journey. And Iman is not just a founder and an entrepreneur, but also now a movie producer, which is an impressive feat. And today we're gonna mix the language probably to be both Indonesian and English, jadi bisa bahasa Indonesia dan bahasa Inggris to make the conversation more flowing. And today we're gonna cover Iman's journey to be where he is today, in his underdog journey, his entrepreneurial journey, and his movie producing journey. We're gonna cover the highs of highs and the lows of low of Iman's entrepreneurial and personal journey. All right, Iman, welcome to the Wise Underdog channel.
It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, lo, bro.
Hey, my pleasure.
Okay, Iman, maybe you can introduce yourself about what Ruang Guru is, maybe who you are, where you're from briefly, and then what is this movie producing all about? Okay.
So my name is Iman. I'm co-founder and CEO of Ruang Guru. So Ruang Guru is the largest tech-enabled education provider in Southeast Asia. So we've been serving about 40 million students across all ages, from
40 million.
Yeah, from like 3-4-year-old kid all the way to adults and professionals. So what we've been doing so far is that we produce learning content and make it available on our app or website. And then in the journey of the company, we also expanded to offline learning as well. So we have about 300 centers across the country right now that are delivering lessons in persons. What else do we do? We also provide tools and softwares to schools, to companies to conduct their learning. So we almost cover like so many different verticals in education. So I think it's like a one-stop learning solution for everyone in the country. So that's what I've been doing for the past 10 years. A bit of my background: I was born and grew up in Padang, West Sumatra. For those of you who are not familiar with Indonesia, it's about 2 hours by flight from Jakarta. I was born there, I grew up there. I spent 17 years of my life over there. And then I had the privilege of moving to the capital to do my undergrad in Jakarta. And then spend some years in the States for my grad schools. Yeah, that's it. How do I... it's a little bit, sometimes it's a very difficult question when people ask me like, just introduce yourself, because I enjoy a lot of things, and when I enjoy things, I try to explore and somewhat try to be professionals in it. So I've always liked movies, and for the past few years, I've been exploring the process of creating film. That led me to become a film producer. So I've produced a couple of films to date. There are more that are going to be released very, very soon. And I think not just film, but I think producing in general. So I've been producing shows, like game shows, TV shows, and many others.
Yeah. For those who don't know Iman's movie achievements, you can sort of look it up about this movie Budi Pekerti, which won an award. And what else now? You're producing another movie?
Yeah, there are a couple of movies that are coming soon. And one of the most anticipated one is called Levitating.
Yeah, Levitating.
Which is going to be released next year.
It's like Harry Potter.
No. I wish.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you, Imam, for introducing yourself. Mungkin kita mulai dari awal ya. So let's go back to where you were, Padang, West Sumatra, right? And it's a humble beginning for you, right? You shared that before, that you have this appetite and curiosity about learning. You start early, and Can you tell us more about your early years, the
Hmm.
story of being an underdog? What is an underdog for you? I mean,
Okay.
underdog is usually someone that has been underestimated or marginalized
Okay.
or taken lightly.
Are we
in some
talking
cases.
about underdog or wise underdog?
Underdog dulu.
Underdog dulu.
Yeah,
Okay.
the first the underdog. Like,
Okay.
it's like the feeling of being an outsider.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
ever feel like you're an outsider, right?
Okay,
Like, can
yeah.
you tell us more about that and maybe connect that with this commitment to education since an early age? I mean, you taught children's, right? Like
Yeah.
library and all that.
Yeah. So I'm the youngest out of 6 from and the only son in my family from parents who never went to college, and I was the first in my family to graduate from college. So I think by looking at that just background, I think a lot of people would associate me as an underdog because I didn't have that kayak privilege ekonomi gitu. I didn't have that privilege tinggal di kota besar seperti di Jakarta gitu. Jadi mungkin by that definition aja mungkin orang udah sering associate me as an underdog gitu. Tapi mungkin yang lebih, tapi sebenarnya it's also a weird position for me because maybe for the outsiders they see me as an underdog, tapi from where I come from, and knowing kayak my competitions lah ya, dalam tanda kutip, misalnya waktu sekolah gitu, kayak teman-teman gitu ya, orang-orang di sekolah gitu, I don't see myself as an underdog. Mungkin itu, maybe itu nggak tahu ya, mungkin mentalitas yang gue punya ya, maksudnya kayak yes, people see me as an underdog, but I don't see myself as an underdog gitu, because
what do you see yourself as back then?
What do I see myself? Good question. Kayaknya mungkin karena kalau waktu kecil gitu ya, gue ini gue gak berantakan ngomong.
It's okay. This is very right on.
Gue
gonna catch you by surprise with all these questions.
Gue karena kayak gini, mungkin waktu kecil itu gue orang-orang di sekitar gue tuh, maksudnya kan mungkin tidak seberuntung gue gitu. Jadi gue juga nggak ngerasa gue privilege or anything, tapi mereka mungkin juga tidak seberuntung gue. And what do I mean by that? Misalnya kayak I had a parents who were very supportive with my education.
Yeah.
Mereka juga, tapi juga tidak at the same time juga nggak pressuring me untuk kayak you have to do this, you have to do that gitu. Tapi ya kalau mau sekolah silakan, kalau mau enggak ya enggak. Itu kan privilege menurut gue gitu. Atau misalnya kayak at the same time kayak parents gue lumayan berkorban banyak untuk supaya gue bisa les gitu ya. Atau misalnya supaya gue bisa beli buku-buku bekas gitu misalnya. Itu kan menurut gue sangat privilege ya, despite my economic situation gitu. Nggak semua orang tua kayak gitu. Nah, dalam situasi kayak gitu gue ngerasa bahwa gue nggak merasa diri gue tuh waktu itu kayak gue tidak beruntung itu tuh enggak gitu. And maybe that mentality that set me akhirnya apart gitu from the rest of the people over there gitu.
Yeah.
Tapi ketika kemudian gue dibawa ke lingkungan, misalnya ketika gue lomba atau punya kesempatan misalnya ketemu sama orang-orang misalnya di Jakarta gitu ya, atau misalnya ke di luar negeri gitu, itu gue merasa sangat underdog. Karena gue tahu bahwa kayak yes, I had the access, but then if you compare the access that I had and my competitions gitu misalnya, itu udah nggak level playing field gitu.
Right. And there is this theory we call it intersectionality. Jadi underdog identity itu intersectional. Jadi dari segi socioeconomic classes, dari segi gender, dari segi immigration status, dari segi sexual orientation, dari segi neurodivergence or your cognitive abilities gitu. So you may not be sort of like gender-wise an underdog or like parents-wise, family-wise not an underdog, but you might be underdog socioeconomically, right? So jadi it's not even lah.
Yeah.
It plays out in a different context.
Betul.
Right? Okay. So that's probably how you felt back then.
That's how I felt back then.
Okay.
Gitu.
Okay.
Dan mungkin mungkin dan akhirnya itu yang akhirnya I think meskipun gue mungkin back then gue nggak ngerti bedanya ya antara underdog dan wise underdog, tapi sekarang mungkin kayak dengan seiring bertambahnya usia dan kayak wisdom gitu, akhirnya memahami kayak mungkin yang membuat gue akhirnya berbeda itu adalah karena mungkin apakah gue dulu tuh wise underdog gitu. Karena I think yang membuat berbeda underdog dengan wise underdog, nggak tahu di jumping apa nggak ya, tapi menurut gue adalah kayak kalau underdog mungkin ya udah orang dia sering diremehkan, sering dianggap tidak layak gitu ya. Journey-nya tuh unexpected gitu, mungkin ngadepin setback segala macam gitu.
Right.
Tapi I think what sets wise underdog apart from the rest is menurut gue tuh di orang underdog ini mereka nggak ngerasa bahwa setbacks-nya itu sebagai just a challenge gitu. Tapi I see that as an opportunity. I see that as actually as an
I really agree with that.
Iya kayak justru bisa jadi privilege sebenarnya gitu. Kayak misalnya contoh kayak the fact bahwa gue muda gitu, and I started a lot of things when I was young gitu kan, kayak organisasi, non-profit, atau even the company when I was itu young gitu kan. Itu kan bagi banyak orang you're an underdog gitu, for sure gitu, karena you don't have the experience gitu kan, itu udah pastilah gitu. Tapi for me on the other hand, kayak I see being young as an opportunity gitu. Kayak the fact that I was young, itu gue bisa move mungkin lebih cepat, gue mungkin punya resiko yang lebih rendah gitu ya, karena nggak, ya udah kalau misalnya gagal ya udah nggak sih gitu.
Wow.
Nggak, maksudnya nggak ada beban yang gue pikul gitu.
Right. This perspective sort of come about during that time when you were 24 and 20, or ini lo baru sadar?
Kayak dari kecil deh.
Oke.
Sebenarnya cuman gue baru memahami bahwa kemudian kayak I think that what sets me apart dan segala macam itu ya udah ketika udah gede gitu. Tapi dulu
so the higher tolerance for risk itu
dari kecil.
Dari kecil. Wow.
Dari kecil. And it's probably because of my background gitu. Karena gue tahu kayak I come from a very modest family kan gitu. Kayak what's the worst thing that could happen sih gitu. The worst thing that could happen ya udah mungkin gue nggak bisa dapat kerjaan yang gue impikan. Mungkin gue akan stay di kampung halaman gue, which is not a bad thing juga gitu ya. Mungkin ya gue sekolah, tapi mungkin ya nggak di tempat yang terbaik yang mungkin gue mau, tapi mungkin gue masih bisa sekolah gitu ya. Jadi kayak gue ngerasa kayak kalaupun gue jatuh tuh gue nggak akan tiba-tiba hilang dari peredaran bumi gitu loh.
That's very interesting karena most underdogs of the world, I mean I've identified as an underdog. I didn't start any entrepreneurial journey until I felt safe.
Yeah.
Nah, lu on the other side mikir actually I'm already not safe. Why bother thinking about safety gitu?
Makanya orang bilang kayak being entrepreneur, wah lu risk taker banget ya. Gue tuh mikirnya enggak juga sih, karena gue juga kayak ya gue bikin bisnis sambil sekolah apa. Maksudnya itu kayak I counted my risk gitu, dan gue tahu bahwa ya ini tuh gue sebenarnya nggak safe aja dalam tanda kutip, tapi on the other hand kayak kalaupun jatuh ya udah gitu.
So that's interesting. Like I don't know why you think that way. Is it like a shift perspective, or you like learn from other people's sort of like journey? Karena most underdogs itu have a limiting belief because they don't feel safe. They don't take the risk because like they already sabotage themselves. Nah lu beda gitu.
Mungkin karena nggak tahu. Ini mungkin karena gue ngerasa dari waktu gue kecil itu tuh gue lumayan karena mungkin udah banyak setbacks-nya ya.
Okay, can you tell us more about your setbacks?
Okay, so macam-macam ya. Jadi misalnya contoh, dan menurut gue akhirnya setbacks ini yang sebenarnya justru transforming my life lah in a way gitu. Jadi sekarang interesting. Jadi misalnya contoh kayak waktu gue SMP gitu, itu gue pernah pengen jadi ketua OSIS, tipikal ya. Kenapa jadi ketua OSIS gitu. Terus ya gue nggak ngerasa bahwa untuk menjadi ketua OSIS tuh sebuah pekerjaan yang rumit tuh enggak gitu. Dan proses menjadinya menurut gue juga nggak rumit gitu. Itu kepedeannya gue waktu itulah gitu. Jadi gue ya campaigning, gue making speeches here and there gitu ya. And then there was one time when I made public campaign gitu di depan sekolah gitu pas upacara bendera. Pas gue lagi ngomong tuh gue dilemparin makanan.
Oh wow.
That happened when I was 12, 13 years old gitu ya.
Somebody threw you something?
Ya, sampah.
Sampah not even makanan, sampah
makanan.
Like
sisa sisa makanan,
like
dia makan cilok atau apalah gitu.
To your face.
Ya. Terus itu that was the first time I felt humiliated gitu publicly. And gue nggak bisa comprehend itu karena gue ngerasa kayak what did I do wrong gitu, kayak why did people hate me so much gitu kan. Dan ketika gue nyampe di rumah itu gue nangis dan orang tua gue nggak tahu sama sekali. Tapi that made
This is 12 and 13 years old?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that made me feel sangat vulnerable waktu itu, dan gue tidak mau akhirnya kayak ngomong di depan publik. Gue takut untuk kayak mencoba untuk involve aja, gue tuh takut gitu karena gue nggak mau pengalaman yang sama tuh terjadi lagi. Gitu. Tapi on the other hand, I think what I was lucky enough, I had a very good support system gitu. Jadi I had a mentor waktu itu yang kemudian when I shared the story and then he told me, I still remember, dia bilang kayak, if you keep doing what you're doing now, which is basically giving up, you're just basically telling the people who humiliated you that they're right gitu. But if you fight back, if you actually prove them wrong, I think that's the biggest maksudnya the biggest fight back gitu. Jadi akhirnya terus gue mikir kayak apa yang bisa gue lakuin. Akhirnya instead of kayak blaming others and kayak kayak why do people hate me so much segala macam, I try to learn what I could gitu. Jadi mungkin ya udah gue improve gimana cara gue captivating the audience, gimana itu yang membuat gue akhirnya kayak nontonin video speeches orang-orang, ngeliatin how do people actually attract other people when they're speaking gitu ya, dan seterusnya lah gitu. Itu gitu. Atau misalnya ketika apa ya, misalnya dan itu yang membuat gue akhirnya kalau nggak ada pengalaman itu mungkin gue akhirnya tidak menjadi comfortable untuk ngomong depan umum seperti sekarang gitu. Itu one example lah gitu. Another example adalah ketika misalnya gue cheated by system gitu.
Okay, what do you mean by cheated
jadi,
by system?
Ketika gue dari kecil tuh kan rajin belajar apa segala macam gitu, straight A kid gitu lah. Jadi gue nggak merasa bahwa gue akan mengalami kesulitan untuk daftar masuk ke sekolah yang gue mau lah gitu, karena tahu bahwa I will have a good enough score to get in gitu. Tapi singkat cerita waktu gue SMP, intinya semua orang tiba-tiba dapat kunci jawaban UN lah gitu. Jadi semua orang nilainya bagus, tiba-tiba bahasa Inggrisnya 10, matematikanya 10 gitu kan. Nah terus pada saat mau masuk SMA dan gue apply, itu nilai gue juga nggak jelek, tapi intinya ada 260 yang diterima, gue nomor 262. Jadi gue nggak keterima awalnya. Cuman gue kan cadangan 1 ya. Jadi intinya pas ada orang yang mengundurkan diri, jadi gue langsung naik gitu. Nah singkat cerita gue udah stres waktu itu, tapi akhirnya gue naik, masuk keterima. Tapi pas gue hari pertama sekolah waktu SMA, gue baru menyadari bahwa yang keterima itu 320, bukan 260. Pas gue liat absennya. Jadi there were 60 people yang keterima, yang masuk ke jalur belakang intinya, karena dia anak siapa, karena dia inilah kenal sama siapa gitu. Nah, cuman itu tuh akhirnya gue di saat itu gue menyadari kayak, ini gue hampir nggak masuk sekolah ini gara-gara ini gitu.
Because of this privileged people.
Iya, yang masuk somehow gitu. Terus akhirnya gue, and what did I do waktu itu adalah, ya gue marah aja, tapi cara gue marah tuh gue datangin ruang kepala sekolah, terus gue nanya sama bapaknya gitu, Pak, ini kamu siapa gitu? Saya Iman, saya murid baru gitu. Ini kenapa 320 orang ya Pak? Kemarin bukannya cuma 260 gitu. Terus dia bilang, oh ya macam-macam lah alasannya. Kita punya kerjasama ini. Terus gue langsung gini, Pak, tahu nggak Bapak? Karena ada 60 orang ini, saya tadinya hampir nggak keterima gitu. Dan technically saya ini sekarang orang paling bodoh di sekolah ini karena nilai saya paling rendah. Gitu. Tapi saya akan buktiin ke Bapak, pada saat saya lulus saya jadi orang nomor 1 dan sekolahnya akan nyesel tadinya kalau nggak terima saya. Terus gue banting pintu. Drama deh lah.
Oh dari dulu ada talent sinetron.
Nah ya talent sinetron gue ada dari kecil gitu. Jadi maksud gue kayak,
holy shit.
Itu kan
sebenarnya,
iya maksudnya itu kan apa ya? Iya, is an underdog situation lah, lu paling ini gitu. Tapi nggak tahu ya, mungkin karena dalam hidup gue, tapi mungkin itu tadi karena gue udah pernah dibully mungkin waktu kecilnya, mungkin gue udah pernah di humiliate orang, maksudnya dealing with so many things that maybe people at my age didn't have that experience gitu. Akhirnya mungkin that built toughness in me gitu, yang apa ya, yang akhirnya ya justru jadi aset buat
gue. So what sort of unites and become the undercurrent and then the common denominator of underdog adalah sense of injustice, unfairness, fighting spirit, proving people wrong, previous humiliation, previous marginalization. So you went through that at age of 13. That's why when you were in 24 starting entrepreneurship journey, ya udahlah. Like I've been through worse and what else could go wrong gitu.
Iya, gue mikirnya gitu. Jadi kayak I had the privilege of experiencing the setbacks early on in my life. So when I see setbacks even today gitu I'm still dealing with setbacks gitu. I feel like it's just part of your process. It's part of your journey. It's part of adulting. It's part of growing up gitu. Jadi itu sih mungkin yang agak.
So who helped you Iman kayak going through that process? Karena to be where you are today, or to be where you were at 24, having gone through that previous 12 years of underdog journey, right? To become wiser as you grow older gitu. What was your support system like? And how do you overcome? How do you integrate all this sort of like adulting lessons or growing up lessons?
I think obviously kayak gue nggak langsung sadar gitu ya. Tapi maksudnya ini gini gitu. Maksudnya I think wisdom sometimes comes late gitu. Kayak lu nyadar dulu terus habis itu dealing with the impacts and consequences baru kemudian lu punya wisdom itu gitu. Tapi I think what I've been grateful about is the fact that I think I have a very good support system, mentor, friends, even family. Itu menurut gue satu yang core gitu ya. Tapi yang kedua apa ya? Mungkin gue lumayan gampang nggak mendistract sih, tapi kayak mekanisme yang gue bangun dalam diri gue tuh untuk kayak overcoming problems lah gitu. So another cerita gitu, misalnya apa ya? Misalnya there were times ketika pandemi itu salah satu titik terendah gue lah gitu ya. Dan ada saatnya dimana waktu itu gue feel like I wanna give up gitu, kayak with whatever I was doing gitu. Tiap gue mandi showering gitu ya, gue tuh nangis gitu di shower gitu misalnya.
Given ruang guru itu.
Iya, udah given ruang guru udah berapa tahun gitu ya. Gue nangis gitu di shower gitu. Dan ada momennya ketika gue meeting di Zoom gitu misalnya. Gue tuh nangis di depan team members gue gitu, karena I feel like like I have so much gitu,
like
so much burden gitu ya,
burden
dan kemudian expectations apa segala macam gitu. So I just like carry out gitu di depan meeting, felt kayak apologizing to my team because I wasn't able to perform as best as I could gitu kan. And itu gue juga bingung sih gimana cara akhirnya gue bisa coming out of that situation gitu. Tapi satu contohnya adalah karena itu pandemi misalnya gitu, dan gue ngerasa I need to let it out gitu. What I did was gue ngerekam gue ngomong sendiri.
Okay.
Jadi gue pakai voice recorder, terus gue ngerekam gue ngomel-ngomel misalnya, atau
that was your therapy back then.
That was my therapy back then gitu.
Okay.
Supaya gue bisa let it out aja gitu, and processing what I had in mind, so that it doesn't kayak overflow. It didn't overflow
your system
in my system gitu. Jadi itu gitu. Tapi abis itu kemudian kedua setelah gue ngomong proses itu, baru akhirnya gue ngomong kan ke mentor dan segala macam. Jadi juga udah lebih lebih organized gitu. Jadi
lebih light.
Jadi terus kemudian ya akhirnya gue distract myself with sports dan segala macam. Tapi nggak tahu ya, mungkin gue ya aside of the support system tadi, on the other hand juga punya mekanisme dalam diri gue tuh untuk kayak figuring out gimana ya cara at least untuk bisa get out of the situation gitu. Itu sih mungkin ya. Not sure if it's gonna happen seperti itu terus-terusan, tapi ya at least so far that's what I've been.
So what I'm hearing from you adalah kayak when you face hardship and adversity, like you try to become tough, but you have a limit. And then you just, okay, I'm gonna break down. And then in that process of breaking down, you actually get back up. That's what resilient is. Right? Okay. And then in one way or another, kayak tough things, you cannot avoid the tough things. Right? Either you distract yourself, as you said, like pick up other hobbies and all that, or you completely just confronted it. Right? Do you think come into reflective mode, right? Like looking backwards gitu. Is there something that you want to have done differently in confronting all of that, in facing all the adversity?
Mungkin ini kalau reflecting back gitu ya, kayak ke masa gue kecil atau mungkin
or even the late
atau pandemi gitu ya. Menurut gue lebih cepat untuk ask for help sih menurut gue.
Okay, that's the common reflections all the underdogs have interviewed. Like asking for help is
karena kadang mungkin juga karena mental toughness dan segala macamnya tadi gitu, you feel like this is something that you still can handle gitu, without you realizing bahwa kemudian masalahnya tuh makin banyak.
Right, numpuk.
And then numpuk, terus akhirnya malah makin jadi sulit untuk ditangani gitu. So I wish I asked for help sooner. I wish I had important conversation that I should have with people around me itu kayak lebih cepat gitu ya. Itu menurut gue sih yang mungkin I would probably do differently sih.
Right. Why do you think that is such a common thing among underdogs? I mean, I felt that way too, and then people that I work with, my clients and people that I interview, they say they have this lone wolf syndrome very, very apparent gitu. Like it's just built in them. I can do this. I don't need help until they have to ask for help, right? But why do you think the underdogs felt like they always have to fight alone? I mean, it's a fighting spirit, right? Why didn't they ask for help? Kenapa kita nggak mau nyari?
Because all this time they've been fighting alone.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, probably because when they ask for help,
Yeah, nobody was there.
Nobody was there.
Nobody was there, and we've been we've been trained to deal with our own problems ourselves gitu. Kayak dari dulu gitu. Saya kayak kalau nggak apa ya mandiri dong, independen dong gitu.
Right.
You should be able to do this dong, you should be able to do that gitu. And dan akhirnya nggak tahu ya mungkin karena akhirnya mungkin selama ini bisa mengatasi, akhirnya kadang juga punya confidence bahwa maybe I should be able to deal with this too. But then without realizing kayak you cannot handle everything yourself gitu.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think and sharing that as well, because I think vulnerability in the underdog journey is very underestimated and underrated, right? I think this is why I'm creating this platform for all the underdogs to share what went through their minds gitu, kayak zaman mereka struggling and they don't articulate this, they don't share it with anyone, right? If like it's like putting a sunshine into a darkness, right? And then all the bacteria suddenly got sort of like dissipated and then transmuted. It's the same thing. If we just struggle alone, individually, and behind the closed door, nobody know what you're struggling with. Right? You have to ask for help. Right?
Ya nggak tahu ya, mungkin karena juga kadang tuh bukan cuman karena nggak mau atau ini ya, tapi itu kadang juga you feel like your problem is not as big enough as others gitu. Jadi sometimes kayak kadang gue juga kadang baca misalnya di media sosial atau apa gitu orang ngomong gitu kayak apa sih misalnya founders ini kok lebay banget sih kayak kok malah curhat, kok malah ini malah apa gitu, nggak tahu karyawan yang lain juga dealing with so many problems. Jadi kadang tuh akhirnya itu yang membuat kayak kadang ya ada perasaan bahwa kayak lu harus menutup banyak hal gitu ya supaya ya apa ya kayak lu nggak dikeliatin kayak seeking for attention atau misalnya lu nggak dilihat kayak weak atau apa, ada sentimen-sentimen kayak gitu juga sih gitu, menurut gua.
It's true. I mean, I interviewed the other underdog founder and he said, I have to hold this together for everyone, right? But it's also you need help, right?
That's true.
Right. So it's just because somebody else suffering is so huge, it doesn't take away the suffering on your own.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I think that's where the realization usually comes about. Okay, cool. Well, tell us more about your movie productions journey. Like, is there anything related to Underdog? Is this something completely an undertaking of a wise underdog, or this is something that you want to prove yourself again?
No, I don't think this is kayak me trying to get validation ataupun trying to prove myself that I can do this or not. Gitu.
Right.
Tapi I think it's just something that I enjoy doing gitu. Jadi I think something that I realize about myself is that I don't want to box myself just into like Iman is ruang guru, Iman is one thing gitu. And not because kayak it's not great atau apa gitu, tapi just because I feel like I'm a human being who has a lot of interest, who still want to explore, even misalnya when people see me udah nggak tahu sukses atau apa mengerjakan satu hal gitu ya, tapi kayak ya gue tetap penasaran tentang banyak hal juga gitu. I still want to have that curiosity to learn from scratch gitu. I think ada itunya lah gitu. Dan dari dulu gue suka nonton film dan gue selalu wonder kayak gimana ya bikin film, gimana caranya membuat sebuah cerita yang akhirnya bisa deliver gitu. I think satu itu. Tapi yang kedua juga melihat film as a very powerful tool. Not just for storytelling, tapi punya impact yang sangat besar lah. Maksudnya buat ekonomi, buat gimana memotivasi orang, gimana menggugah kehidupan orang lain gitu ya. And by film ini bukan cuman kayak motion picture in general, tapi ya segala berbagai macam medium lain lah menurut gue ya yang bisa medium bercerita lainnya gitu. Dan itu yang akhirnya membuat gue kayak terpanggil untuk kayak maybe I should explore this gitu. So few years ago I met this director namanya Regas Banuteja. I've always kayak adored his creations gitu. Banyak film-film dia yang gue kayak suka banget lah gitu. Dari film pendeknya dia dulu gitu. Terus gue ngajakin dia ketemu, gue ngobrol-ngobrol, nanya kayak what project are you currently working on gitu ya. Terus dia cerita tentang Budi Pekerti, terus gue ngerasa kayak ceritain dong. And then ceritanya itu sangat resonate ke gue pribadi gitu. Maksudnya ada elemen of education-nya, ada elemen someone goes through cancellations, how they dealing with the impact of that cancellation, trying to prove bahwa dia tidak bersalah gitu. Ada banyak lah elemen-elemen yang resonate sama gue personally gitu. And in the beginning I was like, oh can I support gitu. Jadi and that's how I sort of like started lah my filmmaking journey. Tapi kemudian dari situ akhirnya ya belajar dan melihat bahwa ini film industri yang menarik juga ya. And that's when I start kind of like expanding my wings and try to do more in the filmmaking gitu. Tapi even before that, di Ruang Guru pun kan sebenarnya one of the things that we did was basically one of the things that we do karena masih kerjaan adalah is actually about learning content gitu. Dan bukan cuma learning content yang bisa diakses di aplikasi, tapi juga the way we market those content is through productions, bikin TV show, bikin film juga, bikin game shows dan lain-lain. Jadi sebenarnya elemen productionnya tuh ya is already in me, udah bagian dari pekerjaan gue, cuman ini sekarang gue cobain ke medium yang berbeda aja.
Okay, thank you, man. So you have that inherent producer mode in you.
Yeah.
All right, since Ruang Guru. Now, what differentiated Iman back then as a founder of Ruang Guru and Iman as a movie producer now? Okay, what's changed now? Like how do you approach this feat or undertaking differently?
I think one thing that is very different is that the resources that I had back then and the resources that I have right now is very much different. Gitu kan. And this is not just like kayak the means or kayak ya economical resources aja gitu, tapi juga people that I know, the support that I have gitu ya. Jadi mungkin waktu pas Ruang Guru dulu ya a lot of figuring out on your own gitu. Jadi kayak ya udah lu nggak ngerti belajar sendiri karena nggak ada gitu, nggak ada ekosistemnya, nggak ada ya supportnya lah gitu ya. Tapi kalau sekarang kayak mungkin karena privilege yang gue punya juga akhirnya jadi gue nggak ngerti, gue bisa kayak nanya produser lain, nanya sutradara lain, belajar dari actors gitu ya, kayak ini gimana gitu ya. Terus mungkin juga jadi lebih bisa banyak yang bisa diekspor at the same time. Jadi mungkin bisa nggak put everything into one basket, tapi kayak gue bisa kerjain multiple films at the same time and learn from all together. Jadi mungkin secara learning curve-nya jauh lebih cepat gitu ya. I think that is one, that's one thing that is very very much different. Tapi secara mentalitasnya mungkin yang berbeda adalah mungkin mungkin gini, kalau kayak di education gitu tuh gue kadang ada perasaan bahwa kalau gue salah ngerjain that will impact kayak to somebody's life gitu kan. Kayak,
as in like employees and customers?
Iya, employees and customers gitu kan. Kayak kalau gue misalnya kalau Ruang Guru hancur atau apalah gitu misalnya gitu ya. Itu kan gue mikir kayak karyawan gue gimana ya gitu ya. Atau misalnya customers gue gimana ya. Atau misalnya ketika gue bikin konten salah gitu secara pendidikan gitu ya, secara edukasi gitu. Itu kan gue mikir kayak orang belajar gimana ya, bisa kalau orang belajarnya nggak ngerti gimana ya sekolahnya gitu. Nah ini tuh mungkin kalau di dunia entertainment tuh mungkin lebih di embrace failures itu mungkin juga ya. Gue ngerasanya gitu, karena ya there's no formula untuk sebuah film tuh bisa menjadi sukses gitu ibaratnya gitu. Jadi kayak lu mau bikin film sebagus apapun tapi mungkin commercially not gonna be working gitu. Atau sebaliknya gitu, film lu mungkin secara technical nggak bagus tapi ternyata disukai sama konsumen gitu, bisa juga gitu. Jadi mungkin karena ada kayak gitunya jadinya trial and error-nya jadi banyak gitu menurut gue ya. Satu itu gitu. Terus yang kedua juga kayak siklusnya mungkin juga lebih pendek ya. Karena kalau let's say you're building a product kan, from the moment you build the MVP until kayak it reaches to the mass itu kan lumayan lama ya. Bisa bertahun-tahun gitu. Tapi film kan kayak ya typical production cycle 1 tahun gitu. Even some film can be made less than a year gitu. Jadi the cycle of trial and error-nya gitu akhirnya jadi ya lebih
So
cepat.
because of that, what changed in you then? Like, do you take risks even more? Do you become much calmer and then not as challenged anymore? Not as kayak as persistent and persevering in fighting?
Enggak sih, kalau I think persistence and perseverance itu has always been part of me gitu. Tapi mungkin yang tadi gue notice adalah satu lebih berani untuk mengambil resiko. Karena ya again tahu bahwa kayak ya ya banyak hal yang nggak bisa dikontrol gitu. Kayak even if you can only kayak control as much as you want, tapi the result is kayak in most cases kayak is out of your hands gitu.
Okay.
Kayak once you're screening your film, there's not much you can do gitu. Jadi mungkin lebih agak apa ya? Lebih kalau bagi gue lebih kayak bisa berpasrah gitu.
Surrender.
Lebih surrender aja gitu karena ya udah you've done your best gitu.
Okay. Is that different when you were back then? Kayak lu ngoyo?
Lumayan beda. Karena dulu mungkin you feel like you want to control everything gitu. Kayak and when you see kayak failures itu bisa kayak ya hit you gitu. Karena kayak you feel like you've done so much gitu ya. Dan kenapa ini gitu. You question many things lah. Tapi ini mungkin karena kayak you see failures kayak regularly gitu, jadi akhirnya mungkin jadi lebih ya udah itu kalau buat gue ya. It might not be the same with other producer, tapi kalau buat gue akhirnya gitu.
And do you still face the same maybe discrimination or underestimation sebagai young movie producers now?
Oh sangat.
Okay.
Nggak tahu ya, mungkin menurut gue nggak tahu, mungkin karena circle-nya juga mungkin lebih kecil ya secara industri gitu. Ini industri yang masih sangat muda gitu. Dan gue kan datang bukan dari orang yang punya background film ya. So mungkin ada orang-orang yang mungkin meng-underestimate dan menganggap bahwa ya gue tidak punya filmmaking skill, kan from business landscape mungkin gitu ya. Dan mungkin nggak tahu juga kan gue punya background di producing, mungkin di ruang guru sebelumnya orang kan nggak ngerti. Tapi jadinya sering di-underestimate ya tidak punya filmmaking skill itu sampai itu gitu. Yang kedua mungkin dianggap juga tidak paham dengan industrinya gitu. Karena ya gue baru 2 tahunan lah ya di industri ini. Jadi benar-benar kayak orang baru gitu. However, I don't wanna position myself as an underdog tadi sih gitu.
Is it because you now have material resources or what changed?
Karena I also have a point of view yang gue tahu bisa add value to the industry-nya gitu. Jadi one example gitu misalnya kayak how people think, misalnya gimana mungkin orang kalau filmmaker pada umumnya gitu ya, gue mengeneralisir lah ya gitu. Itu mungkin ya bikin film, make sure filmnya bagus tapi udah gitu. Tapi kalau gue mungkin bisa ngeliat film sebagai kayak beyond just the craftsmanship itself, tapi gimana ngelihat film itu sebagai sebuah brand gitu. And when I see film as a brand, then I think about how am I going to market this brand gitu. What kind of message do I want to people to catch when they see my film gitu. Gimana caranya orang balik lagi nonton film ini, gimana caranya orang actually recommend film ini gitu ya. Itu kan satu hal yang mungkin filmmaker nggak aware of itu. Atau kedua, skill set yang gue punya dari dunia tech yang gue bawa ke filmmaking. Misalnya kayak how do I make the filmmaking process itu more data driven? Gimana caranya mungkin I use digital marketing more efficiently, more effectively gitu. Dengan targeting, dengan retargeting, segala macam lah gitu ya. Supaya akhirnya jadi lebih tepat gitu ketika gue market film gitu. Atau gimana caranya gue the culture of creating an MVP itu dibawa ke film gitu. Kayak gitulah gitu yang menurut gue mungkin nggak ada sebelumnya. Gitu.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you have a newly acquired confidence sebagai underdog, and in this new journey where you are being underestimated again as an underdog, lo nggak pengaruh gitu. You're not influenced by whatever they project on you.
Dan mungkin gue juga lebih tahu kayak lebih sadar bahwa this is what I can do, this is what I cannot do gitu. Jadi
so you have that humility.
Jadi
and that confidence.
Kalau misalnya nggak emang ini something yang gue emang gue tahu gue nggak bisa kerjain gitu ya. Ya gue juga not even thinking that I was the underdog gitu. Maksudnya emang gue nggak bisa gitu dan emang I'm not gonna touch that area juga gitu. Contoh deh misalnya gitu kayak sinematografi gitu. Ya gue nggak usah pretend that I know about cinematography. I don't know about cinematography gitu kan gitu. And therefore I need people who understand that and teach me about that or who were in charge of doing that gitu. And I'll focus my energy and my resources to do something that I know that I can do gitu. Jadi gue juga nggak. Jadi mungkin tapi di area yang gue tahu gue bisa, I don't see myself as kayak gue underdog juga gitu. And mungkin having that confidence, having that mentality yang akhirnya juga membuat gue merasa comfortable dan tidak mudah insecure di industri yang baru, di sektor yang baru gitu sih.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you, man. So let's explore a bit the mental health aspect of being an entrepreneur, a movie producer, as a leader, right? I mean, a lot of talk now in TikTok and Instagram and YouTube trauma gitu. Do you ever like relate to the word trauma in your life? Is that something like that is resonant to you? Like, do you ever sort of felt like, oh, I have this freaking trauma, I just realized and I need to focus on healing this particular trauma, or this is really affecting me as a leader and as a person? Like, how is your mental health journey so far since as you said, in the pandemic and now?
Kalau gue ya, gue tuh lumayan apa ya, maksudnya self-aware sama feelings gue gitu. Jadi which makes me sebenarnya apa ya, lebih mudah sebenarnya untuk being vulnerable gitu. Dan gue sebenarnya nggak takut untuk menjadi vulnerable sih di depan umum gitu. Jadi kayak apa ya? Jadi ya kayak tadi gitu. Ya mungkin kalau ya gue harus nangis ya gue nangis gitu. Kalau misalnya gue harus take a break, I take a break gitu. I think I have that self-awareness lah ya gitu ya. Jadi ketika menghadapi macam-macam gitu. Tapi ya baik lagi to your question gitu. How is my mental health? Now I think I feel so much better. I feel so much more content gitu ya. Tapi the process to get there is not easy gitu.
Yeah.
Kayak,
can you walk us through how
jadi
you got there?
Macam-macam ya, maksudnya dari try to simplify. Jadi mungkin tapi yang pertama tadi ya, mungkin menurut gue adalah the feeling bahwa apakah ini mungkin kalau gue mau bagi stage lah ya gitu. Satu, I was dealing with dengan perasaan apakah gue layak menjadi leader di tempat gue berada apa enggak. Itu satu yang gue battle for
like not good
years
enough.
gitu ya. Ya not feeling not good enough. Karena for context gitu kan, gue sebelum Ruang Guru kan gue nggak pernah kerja di mana-mana ya.
Right.
This is my first job gitu. Sampai sekarang ini masih my first job gitu. Gue nggak pernah kerja di mana-mana. I was a first time founder for sure gitu. And therefore I didn't have not just the resources, tapi juga I didn't have the knowledge and the skill set to take the company to where it should be gitu. Yes, maybe my co-founder is great gitu kan, atau mungkin gue punya tim dan segala macam, tapi kadang itu membuat gue merasa kayak, oh am I good enough? Kayak apakah gue layak nggak gitu? Apakah gue sepintar co-founder gue nggak? Apakah gue orang kalau gue ngomong orang bisa menganggap itu credible apa enggak gitu? So that's one ini yang gue harus dealing itu. And once I overcome it gitu, kemudian gue lompat lagi ke ini stage kedua gitu.
And how do you overcome it?
How do you overcome it? Embracing ketidaktahuan gue.
Like, how do you embrace that? With humor, with crying, with
humor
friends?
sih.
Okay.
Humor sih.
So you make fun of your own shit,
I
right?
make fun of my own. Kayak orang di kantor tahu gitu. Jadi misalnya kalau ngomongin apa gitu, kayak gue sering diolok-olok gitu, gue kayak terus ya udah gue olok-olok diri gue sendiri aja gitu.
So that helps ya.
That helps buat gue gitu.
Yeah.
Satu itu gitu. Tapi yang kedua ya mungkin akhirnya having the conversation sih menurut gue yang mungkin gue paling penting lah. Jadi I remember I had this conversation with my co-founder. Kayak kita ngobrol tentang what value that we can add to the company lah gitu. Terus gue bingung kayak mencari apa ya value yang gue ini gitu, yang dia nggak punya apa segala macam gitu. Karena I feel like okay he has a lot of things that he can offer. Then I'm thinking like what can I offer gitu. Terus gue ya udah gue ngomong-ngomong lah kayak ya mungkin my communication skills, mungkin ini segala macam gitu. Terus ada satu yang menurut gue terus my co-founder bilang kayak, and in a way mungkin nggak tahu mungkin ini validasi yang gue butuhkan atau enggak, tapi dia ngomong sama gue kayak, you know what, kayak sebenarnya tuh one thing that ini skill yang lu punya, yang bahkan gue nggak punya dan nobody in the company has, adalah your ability to connect with people and somehow make that connection become resourceful either to the company, to whatever you're doing gitu. Without people feel that they're bukan bermanipulasi, bukan orang akhirnya merasa dia dipergunakan atau enggak, tapi justru your ability to connect with people. And I didn't see that gitu. Karena gue nggak ngerasa karena gue for so many years justru gue ngerasa bahwa gue tuh not a relationship person.
I mean, that's crazy, right? We all know that you're a very good social person.
Tapi gue for so many years gue ngerasa enggak.
Right.
Karena dan gue menyadari dulu itu dan ini proses yang panjang ya, tapi gue menyadari bahwa dulu gue seringkali relationship itu transaksional gitu.
Okay.
Dan itu yang dan makanya gue akhirnya nggak ngerasa bahwa oh ya mungkin gue kenal banyak orang tapi I don't connect with people. Dari itu akhirnya gue menyadari bahwa kayaknya karena gue transaksional sih dalam membuat hubungan. Tapi ya kemudian dalam beberapa tahun proses ya menjadi dewasa dan segala macam, gue mengubah itulah gitu. Dan itu something yang kemudian pas gue ngobrol sama my co-founder gitu, oh iya, maybe that's my asset gitu. And I don't see it as an asset tadinya gitu. Dan akhirnya karena itu akhirnya gue mulai akhirnya kayak oh maybe I have something to offer in this company gitu.
Right.
Dan dari situ akhirnya gue mulai bukan cuma itu, akhirnya mulai punya kepercayaan diri tapi hal-hal lain yang gue tahu mungkin orang nggak punya juga di company ini gitu. Kayak kayak kemauan untuk kayak belajar atau kayak ke satsetannya gue atau apalah gitu, creativity dan segala macam gitu. Jadi itu gitu cara mengovercome.
So that tells me a little bit that like you as someone who have all these skills did not even realize that you have that, right? And your co-founder someone
atau even didn't see it as an asset lah gitu.
I see. It takes someone else to tell you that
to tell me that I'm actually good at it, and to hear that from someone that I think kayak
that you respect.
That I respect dan point of view-nya itu menurut gue credible.
Okay.
Gitu.
If you didn't have that, would you have arrived where you are today?
Enggak.
All right. So that probably another lesson gitu. Kayak many underdogs. They don't have the people that can see them as they are.
Yeah.
Right? And then you are lucky that you're surrounded by people who see you as you are and then validate you for who you are.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's stage 1.
That's stage 1.
Stage 2?
Stage 2 adalah menurut gue perasaan ini akhirnya ke eksternal gitu. Yang kemudian ngerasa bahwa kayak emang dia bisa apa gitu. Jadi kalau tadi kan gue ngerasa internally gue tidak merasa capable gitu ya. Ini yang tahap kedua adalah di mana orang merasa kayak kayak what can you do sih gitu. Lu bacot doang gitu. Lu nggak ngerti apa sih gitu tentang bidang lu gitu ya. Atau ya tadi termasuk juga dengan menjadi muda dan being young dan segala macam itulah gitu. Ada situasi-situasi di mana terutama ketika gue bertemu dengan orang-orang yang di luar sektornya gue justru gitu. Jadi misalnya ketika gue ketemu pejabat deh gitu. There was a moment di mana gue janjian sama salah seorang pejabat lah gitu ya, kepala daerah gitu. Gue travel ke daerah ini, terus udah janjian nih ya gitu. Janjiannya jam 8 pagi. Gue nunggu sampai jam 12 tuh gue nggak dipanggil-panggil. Gue ngeliat orang keluar masuk dari ruangan ini gitu. Sampai akhirnya terus akhirnya gue harus ngomong sama asistennya, gue jam 2 mesti ngejar flight. Saya jam 2 harus ngejar flight nih gitu. Bisa ketemu sekarang nggak ya sebentar gitu. Terus akhirnya dimasukin lah. Tiba-tiba gue kayak masuk gitu. The first question yang dia tanya, oh ini yang dari ruang guru ya? Bosnya yang mana? Terus gue kayak, saya pak yang punya gitu. Oh kamu gitu. And I saw kayak the change in his eyes gitu ya. Yang kayak merasa kayak, oh kita tidak di level yang sama gitu. Dan itu karena umur gue.
Right. Age is another underdog.
Karena umur gua gitu.
Right.
Dan yang dilakukan waktu itu adalah kayak, jadi mau apa nih gitu. Gue baru ngomong 1 menit, tiba-tiba dia kayak, oh kalau ini kayaknya ngomongnya sama kepala dinas pendidikan aja nih gitu. Terus dia kebetulan ada dinas pendidikannya, oh ini Pak Kadis nih coba lanjutin ya gitu. Terus dia pergi keluar, Kadisnya juga cuma 1 menit ngomong sama gua. Terus kayak, oh kalau ini ya udahlah ntar diomongin di email aja, saya harus pergi. Jadi gue meeting saya cuma 2 menit, ini keluar kota, gue terbang.
Oh my God.
Terus gue keluar, terus gue pergi sama ada orang temen gue, tapi itu juga dia government relations di company gitu. Terus dia udah marah-marah, udah kayak, nggak kesel nggak ini. Terus gue juga kayak, ya udahlah mau gimana gitu. Gue kayak mau marah juga nggak ini, jadi gue udah gitu. And I dealt with those kind of things tuh banyak banget gitu. Yang karena usia, yang karena gue nggak dianggap tidak punya kapasitas. Jadi yang which makes me kadang question kayak lagi kayak am I good enough gitu. Tapi dari eksternal gitu pandangannya gitu. Dan ini mungkin bukan cuma terhadap kompetensi, tapi terhadap kemampuan leadership, kemampuan memimpin tim, kayak the question about kayak ya apakah gue adalah pemimpin yang baik lah gitu.
Right.
Itu tuh menurut gue ya yang.
So I hear that you were accepting things as they are. Right? Did that help you, or is that a pseudo acceptance where you repress that?
Kalau waktu itu pseudo acceptance.
Okay.
Kayak karena tapi mungkin di sisi lain gue juga yang kayak ya udah gue mencoba berpikir strategi kayak should I let my emotions kayak
take over
atau gue bikin strategik aja justru gitu kayak ya udahlah ini something that I had to deal with, and then ya udah I need to think about the bigger picture of the company, karena kalau gue tiba marah-marah atau ngomong-ngomong di sana kan juga nggak wise juga gitu. Jadi I think balancing that gitu kan. Tapi itu kan something yang kayak ya sebenarnya I had to deal myself aja gitu.
Right. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing that. This is not very commonly known, right? This story, right? And maybe now we're wrapping up, right? If you could tell the younger version of Iman who was a huge fan of Harry Potter, who was teaching students in the porch, gitu-gitu, like, what would you tell that younger Iman now?
I think menurut gua sih satu take it easy.
Okay.
Karena kayak
Did he not take it easy?
kayak dulu gue kayak mau try to do everything,
right.
and there's dan mungkin bahwa kayak gue tuh dulu berusaha sangat besar rasa ingin untuk membuktikan diri and get to that validation. Even kayak tadi gue bilang, ketika gue bilang dirugikan sama sistem yang tadi kan, the first thing that I said adalah kayak, I'll prove that you're wrong, I'll prove that I actually deserve to be here, I prove that I'll be number one gitu kan. Itu kan sebenarnya adalah menurut gue sangatlah external validation gitu sebenarnya gitu, which I might not need gitu sebenarnya gitu. Kayak you should feel good enough about yourself.
But do you think if you didn't go through that, you would not be where you are today?
Mungkin ya, mungkin enggak gitu. I don't know gitu. Karena ya, tapi I wish maksudnya mungkin hasilnya ya beda gitu. Tapi I wish during that process gitu, karena gue ngerasa bahwa selama 3 tahun gue SMA waktu tadi itu gitu ya, yang waktu gue marah-marah tadi, itu tuh motivasi gue tuh adalah emosinya dalam diri gue tuh anger. Gitu.
Yeah.
Karena gue marah gitu. Nah, harusnya gue bisa achieve the same result without anger. Itu maksud gue yang gue kayak, oh ya mungkin harusnya nggak.
Well, what do you think though the alternative of anger for people to be motivated? Like right now, like you're motivated to produce movies. So what changed from anger to what now? What keeps you up?
Impact.
Okay. So it's genuine impact that like, okay, I have the privilege.
I have the privilege and therefore you have to help other people to level up. Atau misalnya kayak, you know what you're doing itu will impact other people's life gitu. Tapi kalau anger itu kan maksud gue sangat maksudnya gue nggak bilang it can be resourceful ya. Menurut gue in a lot of situations I use my anger also and channel them into something that is good tuh bisa juga gitu. Tapi mungkin nggak tahu ya, mungkin impactnya adalah menurut gue impactnya adalah kalau kemudian apa yang lu kerjakan itu tidak berhasil, akhirnya lu jadi marah sama diri lu sendiri. Karena lu ngerasa kayak, oh what did I do wrong? What could go wrong? Misalnya harusnya gini, harusnya gitu. Tapi kalau pada akhirnya tadi the motive is genuine intention that you actually wanna do this because of for whatever reasons lah, you wanna help other people, you wanna support your family, whatever gitu ya. Akhirnya mungkin ya lebih perasaan surrendernya itu lebih flowy.
Lebih flowing. Okay. Thank you. And now, for those other underdogs out there watching this interview who might be feeling the same like you, who might be from other far-flung region di Indonesia atau other part of the world, right? Who are facing through the same thing, cheating by the system, marginalization, underestimation, being looked down for being young. What advice do you have for them?
I think one thing that I realized adalah success is not having it all or trying to find the right momentum or find the right timing gitu ya. Tapi how do you basically grow in every step that you take gitu. Jadi do not underestimate the process that you are going through right now, the steps that you are taking gitu, karena only from those steps you can only grow gitu. Jadi itu yang gue sadari, dan mungkin hopefully with all the underdogs who are dealing with adversity right now gitu ya, dan macam-macam lah ya gitu, itu bisa melihat proses yang dia alami itu ya sebagai something yang sebagai kesempatan bertumbuh lah atau itu gitu. Dan yang kedua bahwa kayak realize bahwa in this process, in this journey, you are not alone. You have support all around you. Maybe you don't realize it gitu, because you're so focused and you're so determined in achieving your goal. So try to pay more attention and to small things around you, because you never know that those small things or even those people gitu ya, will be the backbone to
your success.
To your success.
All right. Thank you, man. That's awesome. All right. Any questions for me, man? Welcome for me if you want to ask something.
Oke. Gue mau nanya.
Gantian loh, gantian.
Nggak. Kan lu as a coach gitu ya. Kan you've met so many people and especially you've met so many entrepreneurs gitu.
Yeah.
What is the sort of like typical pitfalls that you see from entrepreneur, especially when they're dealing with their own mental health journey gitu?
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, the exact answers and stories you share with me itu sama. Feeling not good enough, feeling alone, not asking for help is so common.
Okay.
I was like, how? Like it's 100%. Like
regardless of their background,
they're women, black, racial minorities, founders from even privileged background.
Sama.
The pitfall that I saw from their mental health journey is that, again, as you said, like they didn't ask for help early. And many of them actually either develop diseases, right? Or like quit too early. They just quit out. Like they just cop out. Like, bye, this is not for me. Or they got burned out. And that's number one pitfall. The other pitfall is that they think they are the victim of their situations. Oh, my investors does this to me. My co-founder does this to me. My customers like they think that everything and everyone is against them. And that actually is not very healthy. Karena like you must have contributed to the dynamics why you are in situations. Lo nggak victim. Gitu. You're not a victim. You play a role in this. But they don't have that awareness and mindfulness and self-awareness. Yeah. What role or dynamics that they play in that situations that contributed to the outcome where they are today? Because it's easy to always project and blame other people, but it's not easy and it's not comfortable to admit that you also the bad actor. Like, oh shit, I also did this. It's to admit that it requires courage. It requires vulnerability to admit that you contribute to the shit show you are part of, right? I think that's a pitfall that most entrepreneurs that I've coached with found themselves and discovered. And this is why I think there are many coaches these days, or like this is why in many YC-backed companies, like almost everyone is required to have a coach now as a founders, like because they're lonely at the top and they don't have someone else who they don't report to that can hold them accountable. Because who do you report to? Your investors and your board, right? But
at the same time, you also perform.
Yeah, you have to perform. So you can't be vulnerable with them. Yeah. Who can you be vulnerable with? I mean, if they have wife or they have husband, they also don't want to burden their partners. So they need someone independent outside of this constellation to be very neutral and to be very safe and nurturing and loving to them. That like, hey, I'm here with you. I might not go through and might understand what you go through, but I'm here with you. And as you said, I'm not alone. I think that factor of relationship quality really helped these founders and entrepreneurs go to the next stage. Because I also know that like it's not how I coach them that makes them succeed or make them get what they were. It's my relationship with them that makes them able to find their own answers and go to the other end. Karena it's not the quality of the coaching, it's the relationship quality that the coachee and the coach develop that make them succeed. I think that's
I have one more question tadi karena ini mungkin pertanyaan yang kayak a lot of entrepreneurs jarang discuss karena tapi menurut lo kayak when justru entrepreneurs should quit?
Oh, when should they quit? When they realize that first they have other priority in their life that this cannot take over anymore. Like let's say family or ailing parents or their own health, right? Like you should know this is a red flag. Your bro or your sis. Yo, wake up. Like life is so short. You're gonna die one day. Do you really want this thing to be the last thing that you do before you die? Right? Number one. Number two is that when they realize they don't have any more capacity to grow anymore. Because it takes a lot of energy to grow to be somebody else. Like you said, right? You went to many stages. Like at what point do you realize, I'm done. I don't think I have the skills to monitor or scale 1,000 to 10,000 people. Because it takes a different person and personality and skill set to be that person, right? And you just have to admit, like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to quit. And if you keep lying to yourself and manipulating that you are the person, you probably will take the company down. And that happens a lot. And then what happened? They don't bow out elegantly. They got replaced by the board. And that's that truth. right?
Mm.
That's almost dramatic, right? And I think the last one is like, I don't know, like some other founders find that like they actually want to do something else, but they lie to themselves. This is something that I need to prove myself that I can do this,
Mm.
because they haven't realized and admitted that like, okay, like I don't think I want to do this. I'm doing it because I have to. I think that language shift from I have to I want to and I should
Mm.
is really important. If you keep thinking and saying I have to and I have to and I should and I must,
Mm.
but you say I want to and I want to, that's probably why you should stick around.
Mm. That's good.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
everyone
Thank you.
for
Thank
staying
you.
in. Like we've covered everything from the high and the low, the vulnerable, the funny, the underdog story of Muhammad Iman Usman, a dear friend and also a very successful entrepreneur and movie producer in Indonesia. And I guess globally, you have your own Wikipedia page, man. And stay tuned to the next episode and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.